Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming together tonight. I am incredibly excited to spend about a half hour conversing with my amazing friend, Dr. Holly Woods. Hi, Holly. How are you tonight?
I'm great, Kristen. Excited to be here and happy for this conversation.
Well, thank you so much for carving out some time to connect with myself and, I don't know, 40 other great friends, which is a new format for me, but I really was excited to share with these other folks as well your compilation of your life's work and through your book called The Golden Thread, which I finished in my pool this weekend. And what's cool about this conversation is that in the conversations I've had previously, they were more reflective, expressing gratitude for a shared journey and a pivot that occurred for me and my awakening and my lessons. And when I connected with you and asked you if I could chat about your book, I hadn't even read the content yet. So this conversation for me is going to be different because it's more forward facing. And it was so cool on Saturday when I started getting into the meat of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so divinely timed because I needed to understand this and learn this. And I wouldn't have been ready for this 3 months ago. And there's a lot of people who are connecting this evening that I think are going to have some great takeaways. So I'm really excited. So I'd like to start by expressing your purpose for writing this book. So in your own words, and I do have earmarked in the book your quote, but what was your reasoning or purpose for writing The Golden Thread?
Maybe you should read what I wrote. I'm joking.
Do you want to see how close it was? I'll let you go.
I wrote the book. I'm curious what I'll actually will say that so much of the book was written through me, not by me. So sometimes I actually have to keep rereading the book, like, now what did I write? I will say that I think I wrote the book, at least one of the reasons I wrote the book was because I wanted to express in this moment, I was called to write the book, and thank goodness I listened, and it launched during a pandemic and, before the much needed global unrest that we're experiencing, that each of us has a unique one-of-a-kind role to play on the planet to make our greatest contribution. And literally, if I can do it, you can do it. Because all of us experience these challenging journeys through which we become liberated, and each of us has a contribution that is so needed on the planet that when any of us is not really enlivened in our purpose in this lifetime, right here and now, the world suffers. So in a nutshell, that was my message.
And that is what you wrote, so good job. I think one of the big takeaways in reading the book, in reference to purpose finding and your goals of writing the book, was to shed light on the fact that it's not just when you're in the positive mode, which we know there's no such thing as positive or negative, it's all perfect, but it's really through the challenges and the muck that we discover wwho we are. And in reflection, you shared about how those are the defining moments.
Yeah, and also that we truly wouldn't go where we need to go in life if we didn't have those. Because most of us would choose to live a simpler, more comfortable, pleasurable, the path of least resistance, and probably never arrive at fulfilling our purpose. So to some extent, we're required to have these opportunities in life that create the chance to become more of ourselves and less of who we're not, which I also write about. So in these moments of discomfort and pain and trauma, at times, it does not always go to a traumatic level, but discomfort of this tension of us butting up against something that provokes us in some way. If we use that, if we choose to use it in a productive way, we go inside and have this deep inquiry about, well, what is in me that's resonating with this thing that I need to be aware of. And then we come to the possibility of liberating that if we choose to. You know, I think in retrospect, my life was as challenging as it was because, as my father would say, I'm one of the most stubborn people on the planet. And so I just never really stopped and paid attention early enough that, oh, these things kept happening. I wonder why. You know, so I had to keep hitting my head against the wall over and over again in order to gain the necessary message that was being delivered to me. So, you know, the other reason I wrote the book is because I don't want anybody to have to do what I did to find themselves more fully.
Yes, thank you for that. And I think there's probably a lot of us, especially collecting tonight, that are shaking their heads going, yes, I remember hearing those words and, you know, in my growth too, of why do you always have to learn the hard way, right? I thought of that when I read that portion of the book. I'm like, yes, that was my whole childhood. It was, why do you have to learn?
We do have to learn the hard way. I mean, if there was an easier way, it wouldn't accomplish the same result. So
Agreed.
We are put in this life, we choose these lives. And I believe that those of us who have really challenging lives have chosen it on purpose to do more of the work in any given lifetime. So, you know, you could say that those of us whose lives have been more traumatic are actually soul warriors. We came back to liberate more of ourselves in this lifetime to be ready to do what's now needed and required finally to live in a world that is more just and peaceful and coherent. So thank God for these lives that some of us have lived to be here now ready to help move humanity to the next place.
Which is incredibly exciting. So after reading your book, I realized that this is the PhD of purpose, and that we could literally take an entire 2 years of just digesting all of this brilliant knowledge. And it also made me have an even higher appreciation of you and how rare it is that we can find someone who could take us this deep into content. And I know that we have some global purpose leaders on here tonight, and some founders, and, you know, some really deep people that are collecting this evening. And it makes me reflective of how special you are, that you can mentor and coach us to the level that this book explores.